Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani here. How you doing? We're gonna have our nice Q&A here today. I'm sipping a little bit of my butter coffee with collagen. And I also got my little side game going. Got some of my apple cider vinegar with ginger in there, which is great. Love it. And this is sugar-free, so it's sweetened with a little bit of stevia. Very good for my throat, because I'm recovering from a little throat issue, but I think I'm sounding pretty good today. What do you guys think? All right, so let's chime in. What's going on? What questions are on your mind in the functional medicine, nutrition, or natural health world? Let me know. I'll give you guys a minute or so to percolate here. All right, so what's going on in the natural health world? Questions are coming in here. Feel free and let me know. All right, let me just bring my little question box over here in front. Genesis writes in, how long until you think functional medicine will be more accessible and affordable? I mean, it just depends, right? Like for instance, my son last year in his first couple months of life, he had a little innocent child murmur, like a heart murmur, right? We brought him to the cardiologist, right? Just to rule things out, like a simple 20-minute appointment. And that 20-minute appointment cost $2,500. So, right. So I paid $2,500. We hadn't hit our deductible yet. Heart was totally fine, clear, no problem. I spoke to another cardiologist. They're like, hey, you shouldn't even have done it. You should have given him at least a year to kind of grow out of it, so to speak. And it was totally fine, no problem. But I spent $2,500 for a 20-minute appointment. So it just depends, right? I think conventional medicine is far more expensive. And if you look at functional medicine, what you're getting for, let's just say $3,000 to $5,000 is far more than, for instance, what I got in a 20-minute consult with a cardiologist ruling out a murmur. So I think it just depends. I think first off, dial in all of like the free stuff, right? There are lots of functional medicine people like myself and others that just provide tons of free information, right? How do we connect with people and develop rapport? It's putting ourselves out there. It's giving lots of free information. It's really exposing ourselves and trying to provide as much value as possible for free. And that's exciting because I help probably 99% of people I help, I don't even interact with on a doctor-patient level, which is exciting. So I think take advantage of all the free stuff. And then after that, then look to invest that next step in your health. Invest the next step in your health. Delty writes in, would you say green smoothie with fats and proteins or bacon and egg sausage is a better breakfast? It depends. I mean, I like mixing it up. So, I mean, for me, I like sometimes just a simple green juice with some collagen, amino acids, some MCT oil, something fast or simple, or a butter coffee. I like simple breakfasts off the bat. If I know I'm going to have like a more stressful, longer day, more activity, then I will throw in like some more solid foods like bacon and eggs. So I think it really depends, but I think it's good to have a couple of breakfasts up your sleeve that you can rotate in there. Let's see here. Next question. Amanda Smith writes in, how do you keep getting GERD while purely water fasting? Well, I mean, you shouldn't be having GERD while you're water fasting. If you're having GERD while you're water fasting, there's probably something going on called gastroparesis, where the food's just sitting in your stomach and it's not emptying. So, I mean, the first thing I would do is do some natural bitters. So get some Swedish bitters, or you can sip on some ginger tea. That's kind of has a natural prokinetic effect where it kind of helps your stomach empty better. So I would look at that first and get to the root cause. There also could be some H. pylori or some kind of underlying SIBO that's affecting your motility as well. So I would look there first. Lakshmi writes in, my husband has AS, that's ankylosing spondylitis. His white blood cell counts, wow, 11,000. How to bring it down? Well, AS, ankylosing spondylitis, is an autoimmune condition that affects the lower back typically. You see it positive with HLA-B27 antibodies. Autoimmune diet and address the infections, address the underlying inflammation. I mean, how that may represent with your husband may be a little bit different, but it's the same kind of overall approach when you're addressing autoimmune conditions. Get the inflammation, get the food, get the leaky gut under control, get the inflammatory support, fix the nutritional deficiencies, get the infections and the immune issues under control. Wonderful girl writes in, can we lower high blood pressure only with taking potassium? Not necessarily. I find blood pressure is very well helped by magnesium. It's also helped by bringing inflammation down in your diet. It's also helped by and getting insulin resistance under control. So insulin, magnesium, getting inflammation down. Potassium can also be helpful too. And it's kind of ironic because a lot of the blood pressure medications, they actually deplete a lot of the same nutrients that actually can help low blood pressure. So like ACE inhibitors or beta blockers, they have kind of this perpetual tendency to keep you on the medications because a lot of the nutrients that help support blood pressure are now being depleted by the medication. So it's a really difficult situation. The Korvac writes in, would magnesium malate be better for the morning? I think so. I mean, malate kind of plugs into the Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle better. So I like it. It just depends. If you feel really relaxed and sedated, then I just tend to keep my magnesium at night. If you feel pretty good with the malate, that's great. Then I would do it. I listen to your body. All right, I'm going to jump over here to Facebook for a sec. Hey, Sherry. Sherry writes in, fast way to reduce belly fat. I tried HCG again, didn't work as well. So, I mean, number one off the bat, I would just make sure your diet's dialed in. I know that you've kind of had really good success in the past with kind of a ketogenic paleo template. I'd also know that maybe stress could be an impact because stress can mobilize, right? Cortisol can mobilize more sugar. So it's like you're eating sugar, but you're not because your stress hormones are increasing sugar in your body. So I would say make sure you're doing good like adaptogens to help keep your stress and your cortisol in check. And then I would dial in, as long as your hormones are doing good and you're stable, I would dial in a little bit of the intermittent fasting and try to cut your feeding window down to 8 hours and just try to do 2 or bigger meals and see how you do with that. You can also keep track of your blood sugar. You can do a fasting insulin in the morning and just see where your insulin's sitting. Ideally, I like it between 2 and 5, just to make sure your insulin's good. If your insulin's going higher because your cortisol is getting high because of stress, then that's something that I would keep an eye on. So it really depends the underlying mechanism. And of course, I'm making an assumption that you're probably doing, let's just say a little bit of intermittent fasting. You're doing a little bit of keto paleo. So as long as you're doing those things and you're dialed in, just try that next step. Let me see here. Stefan writes in, hey, Stefan. That's more of a comment than a question. Jay writes in, talk about psoriasis. What's the overall game plan? So psoriasis is an autoimmune condition that affects the skin. You can kind of get scaly, you can get itchy, you can even scratch till you bleed. You got to get to the underlying issue. So there's usually a food allergy component. So autoimmune template's a great starting point, and then digging deeper to inflammation, to infections. And a lot of times people that have autoimmune conditions, they've really stressed out their hormones as well. So you really have to, get the autoimmune underlying issue addressed with the food and with the gut, and then work on supporting kind of what's been depleted the last decade or so. It tends to take a long time for it to happen. Oh yeah, Akbar writes in, can probiotics be started along with Silva and Para One? Yeah, Akbar, I saw your question here come in, so I'll answer that later on today for you specifically. But yes, it can, especially if it's a round 2, especially if you've been on killing herbs for at least 2-3 months. I like to start adding in probiotics if we're continuing with more killing because maybe things aren't fully addressed. I like to start adding probiotics in during that kill phase, at least at half dose, at least 1 in the morning, 1 at night, just to prevent a rebound overgrowth from happening. Diana writes in, best test for epigenetic analysis. I mean, I'm not sure about that. I mean, if we're talking epigenetics, I would just look at a lot of the functional tests that we do regarding the urine, the hormones, the adrenals, the organic acids, the ion panel. Conventional blood testing can be really helpful to look at absolute function. I'm not a huge fan of genetic tests in general because you could be an alcoholic and seriously unhealthy. You could have your life turned around and being super healthy, and your genetics are your genetics, right? Because you're not looking at the epigenetics, the expression of those genes. So that's why we like a lot of functional tests that can give us more info on how those genes are expressing. All right, cool. I'm going to go head back over to YouTube here. All right. Dank311 writes in, for athletes, how much more over the RDA would you need for sodium, potassium? What ratio do you think to use for athletes for proper cellular hydration? Great question. I would say on the potassium side, at least 4,700 milligrams on the potassium side, maybe more depending on stress. And on the sodium side, I would go up to 1,200 milligrams-ish. I mean, for the most part, I'm going to be using a high quality real salts. If I'm doing a lot of sweating, then I may add in some extra electrolyte support. There's a couple that are out there, like Endure is a really good one, or Concentrace is a really good one by Trace Mineral Research. Those are good. It's about 1,200 milligrams on the sodium and 4,700 milligrams on the potassium. Delty writes in, how to fix hiatal hernia.
So there's a technique you can do where your arms are up, and then you have your on your tippy toes, and then you're like swallowing water, and you just drop down, and that can kind of help pull. Essentially, a hiatal hernia is you have like the top part of the stomach, the cardiac portion of the stomach. Here's your diaphragm and your esophagus here, and it starts popping up. And so essentially, when you're doing this, you're trying to raise everything up and then drop it down. And that pulls it down. You can also see a good chiropractor or an osteopath. They can get in there, breathe in, and then when you're breathing out, your stomach starts to come back up and you can pull down. That's just, I mean, there's one that's you can do on your own, which is the one like this, and then drop down. The other one, you should need a practitioner. But get to the underlying cause. A lot of times hiatal hernias are going to be driven by inflammation in the stomach, sometimes low stomach acid and bacterial overgrowth and H. pylori. J. Pat writes in, let me see here, lots of questions. I'm taking GI Clear 1, 4, and 5 for dysbiosis. What do you think about the carnivore diet? Does this help with symptoms? Carnivore diet, I've used it successfully in some patients. It's really good for patients that are super sensitive. The more autoimmune, the more hypersensitive to vegetables and carbohydrates someone is, the more I would tend to move that direction. Some people just do great just cooking their vegetables or moving to a lower FODMAP type of template. They do great. If that works or that's kind of the direction that we're in, that's awesome. The next step would be if that's helping a little bit and you want to try going the next step, then you can go to a carnivore diet for a few weeks. A lot of patients write in on these chats, which is great. The only issue is I just don't have all their history and their notes in front of me. So I'm just going to do my best on that, but I may have some information incomplete. So just keep that in mind. Let me see here. What does infection killing cause so much stress? Well, it's causing stress because all the dead debris that you're killing in your gut and your intestines has to be processed by your lymphatic system, your detoxification system, and your immune system. So one, do it slower, titrate up one at a time so we don't overwhelm our system. Number two, we can add in gentle binders to help bind these things up, put a straitjacket on it so they're not flailing their arms, so to speak, and causing more stress. And then number three, we can add in some sulfur amino acids, or we can add in some glutathione, some gentle detoxifying herbs like milk thistle or dandelion, things to help support the liver and tonify it. We can also add in ginger tea, which I love because that is a natural anticoagulant, so it keeps things moving and flushing through the body. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing killing, and just know when that's happening, if you're having an issue, that means there's a lot of stuff that's being released and your immune system, detoxification, and lymphatic are being stressed. You can also do things like sauna, rebounding, lymphatic massage. All those things are very helpful. And just simple things like hydration, right? The solution to pollution is dilution. Genesis writes in, can you confirm on one of these 99% you've helped a ton, even though I can't afford to meet with you? Yeah, so in general, I would just say work on the diet and lifestyle stuff first, and then look at kind of allocating money away as an investment in your health. Like if you have an HSA account, that's a real easy way to do it because you can put that money in there tax-free. Personally, myself, I use the MediShare, which is like a Christian health share. And my insurance for my family a month costs me $425 for me and my family, and that gives me $1 million coverage. And my deductible is around $3,000. And then with the HSA laws, I can put $7,000 away into my HSA tax-free, and then that money can be used on any additional lab supplements, paying your deductible, whatever. So that's kind of how I do it. So there's a lot of good options. Before, I was on a Cobra plan and I was spending like 3 to 4 times that, getting virtually no care at all. It was silly. So I use my HSA and then the Christian healthcare like MediShare. There's Liberty Health Share. There's a couple others, but Liberty and MediShare are the big ones. All right, excellent. Tia writes in, what supplements do you recommend for morning stiffness? So number one, just make sure your diet's dialed in regarding, what you're doing for like food, like paleo template, right? Those kind of things. Number two is make sure if you're doing a lot of exercise, foam rolling, those kind of things are great. What I do in the morning right now is I'm doing very high dose of enzymes on an empty stomach. So I'm doing like a Wobenzym, Vitalzyme formula, very high dose. Take those first thing in the morning, empty stomach, and I do a cold shower. So that really helps with inflammation. The enzymes go into my bloodstream. It gobbles up inflammation compounds, and then a really nice cold shower.
It's wonderful. I install one of the big rain shower heads. So then I just go in that in the morning and it just totally douses my body. I do a warm shower for like 3 to 5 minutes. And then I finish my shower with a 1-minute cold shower. And it's quite invigorating. Britt Tiki writes in how to get rid of IBSD. So all IBSD is IBS with a tendency for diarrhea. So, you know, if you've already been diagnosed with IBSD, they basically have told you, yeah, we have no idea what the heck is going on, because IBS is a diagnosis of exclusion, meaning, hey, we've excluded irritable bowel disease, right? Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, anything inflammatory, cancers, those kind of things, but we still don't know what's going on. So first thing is I look at the food aspect, right? I look at digestive aspect, enzymes, acids. Are you able to break down your foods? Number 3, we're looking at inflammation in the gut. It could be more subclinical inflammation, right? They're going to be evaluating inflammation typically with a scope. So they're looking for really inflamed tissue, but you may have tissue that's mildly inflamed, but not visibly inflamed, so to speak. And you can see that with immune markers being higher, like IgA, or you could see that with calprotectin being higher. And then, of course, bacterial overgrowth or H. pylori or various infections or fungal overgrowth could be present. So you really got to dig in deep to figure out what's happening with you. Kitty writes in, Dr. J, 29 years old with unilateral oophorectomy. I think that's when you have an ovary removed. Dutch says non-existent testosterone, estriol, and very low progesterone, estradiol, already doing clean lifestyle. Any advice for testo replacement? In general, I typically would not do any testosterone replacement in a female. I would be using progesterone, which can go a little bit down the androgen pathway, and DHEA, which can go a little bit down the estrogen pathway. I would not be doing any testosterone off the bat. And you still have one ovary there, so that's good. So you're still going to be making some hormones. So I'd be working more on the adrenal side, and I'd be supporting some of the progesterone and DHEA, and I'd be using pregnenolone as well. But I would need to see your levels exactly to give you more specifics on that. But I would get to the underlying cause. I mean, why did you have a oophorectomy? Was there endometriosis on it? Did you have an ovarian cyst that burst? What was the underlying cause? I need to know more information, because whatever caused that surgery to begin with, that underlying issue has to be addressed and resolved. Irma writes in, I have severe bloating. I take GI Microbex and Alamax for possible SIBO. Now feeling like eating is irritating me, causing more bloating, throats closing, red swollen lips. This may be a histamine. Yeah, it's hard to say. So, I mean, I'm not sure if you're treating yourself or you're working with a practitioner, but you need to be following a system. So in my line, like what I do is we have the 6R approach. We work on removing the bad foods. That's the first R, remove. The second R is replacing enzymes and acids. We want to make sure we're digesting our foods. We want to make sure things like skin, hair, and nails start to improve. We want to make sure our stools actually look good, meaning we don't see food particles in there. Our stools aren't floating, right? Our stools are looking good. We're having regular bowel movements, regular motility. The third R is we're working on healing the gut lining if there's inflammation in the gut lining. We're working on supporting our adrenals so we can regulate inflammation and energy. We may be supporting some of the nutrients that help support our hormones. And the reason why we do that is because when you start killing, it can actually be a little bit stressful on the body, and these kind of symptoms happen. So we're kind of prone to be in a society where if you have an issue, we go after it and we kill right away. And sometimes that can be too soon. And then the 5th R is the repopulation, reinoculation. The 6th R is retesting. So it just depends. A lot of people have these issues because, number one, they're either going too fast or they're not plugging in to what they're doing into an overall big program. So make sure there's a comprehensive approach, and make sure you're using things like ginger tea and or maybe even binders like activated charcoal, and you're kind of titrating up your dose slowly and methodically to avoid some of these issues. Let's see here. Okay, we're looking good. I'm already a little bit late for my next patient. That's okay. We're going to just finish up my questions and then we'll jump on board. All right. Alma writes in, I noticed a little white round patch around different parts of my body. Both kids have them as well. Also foul genital smell, cheese-like, even when freshly washed. That sounds like fungal yeast issues. So number one, clean up your diet. Number two, you can get a really good antifungal body wash. If you go to my site, justinhealth.com/shop, I think I have a couple up there. You'll see one cream up there that's called Wonder Balm. It's a really good topical cream. And there's a really good soap up there by Purely Northwest or ART Naturals. That's a really good antifungal soap. So keep that in mind. Akimo, what's the point of silver para 1 when GI Clear 1, 4, and 5 have already been taken for 3 months? It depends. Depends on how bad your infection is, what's going on. If we have severe infections, we may have to go a little bit deeper and do a second round of herbs. It just depends on the severity. I don't have your case file up, so I can't speak specifically. But typically, if I recommend second rounds of herbs, it's usually there's some deep underlying issues going on that need more support. Wonderful girl. What can you recommend for Parkinson's disease as a supplement and physical activity? What do you think about levodopa or not? Typically, I'd be using a lot more of the L-Dopa for sure. I'd be using more of the natural L-Dopa with a lot of the nutrients as well. Problem with just going super high dose L-Dopa, it can also deplete serotonin. So I would have a little bit of 5-HTP with B6 in there as well. You can Google Marty Hins. He has lots of experience treating Parkinson's patients with amino acids, but there's a lot of autoimmune connection with Parkinson's. We're finding more data every day that's connecting Parkinson's to autoimmunity. So you got to look at the gut, got to look at the inflammation, got to look at the diet, got to support the nutrients to make dopamine naturally, because there's a lot of nutrients that have to be in there as well. So high quality multi, dopamine, L-Dopa from Acuna purines, tyrosine, 5-HTP, B6, calcium, vitamin C, magnesium, all those really good nutrients. So make sure you're dialing everything in and you're working with someone that's helping you with that, because the gut has to be looked at too. Hey, Sherry, fastest way to reduce belly fat. I think we already talked about that on Facebook. Let me see here. Akimo, is it possible to increase tolerance to silver and para 1 after doing GI? Yeah, I mean, it depends. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So if you've been doing GI Clear 1, 4, and 5, you should be then, and if I recommended silver and para 1 after, you should be just following the protocol sheet and then finishing it up. And if you haven't chatted with me in a handful of months, we need to get you back in so we can follow up. You're welcome there, a wonderful girl. Akimo writes in the 6R, do we retest the GI map, the Dutch, or both? It's primarily going to be retesting the gut test. Lakshmi writes in, husband's HLA-B27 is positive, currently has stiff neck, lower back, any specific foods control diet to eat? Yeah, autoimmune template. Can we get rid of dysbiosis by getting probiotics, by eating foods containing anti-nutrients as well? Well, if you have a significant dysbiosis where it's causing symptoms, you can starve it out on one side with the foods, right? Potentially lower FODMAP, potentially lower refined sugar, gluten, all those things. On the other side, we can work on killing it and knocking it down that way. And then on the third side, we can kind of support the reinoculation part. So it's really, you want to do it 3 sides. You can't just do it with typically one of those, unless it's minor. Then we can do it maybe with just diet or probiotics, but it just depends on how serious it is. Delty writes in, have you helped clients with erectile dysfunction? If so, what helped? Yes, I have. I mean, it's multifaceted. There's not like one thing, right? That's the reason why like functional medicine doesn't have one pill. So of course we would support the adrenals, which are a lot of the building blocks for your testosterone and male hormones. Number 2, we have to make sure we manage stress. So sleep, not over exercising, managing stress during the day. Number 3, make sure your digestion's working, because all the building blocks to make your hormones come from your food. So if you're eating bad food, you're screwed. Number 2, if we're not digesting, breaking down, assimilating, utilizing, and absorbing that food, you're also screwed. So it's diet, it's absorption, it's stress, it's sleep. And then there's other things that we can do on top of that, like DHEA or tribulus or maca, or there's other herbs too. People tend to just go to the supplements, but you have to make sure you kind of address everything comprehensively. Nick writes in, I hear lots of different opinions on DIM supplementation. How does it really affect our hormone levels? And does it have any effect on mood and depression? I mean, DIM is just it's a methane kind of sulfur-rich compound from typically like green vegetables, and it just helps with estrogen metabolism. I think it's fine. Let's see here. I just saw one a second ago. Sorry, guys. There it is. How much B12 do you personally take a day? I just take what's in my multi-support pack, and I do that twice a day. Sherry writes in, mammogram alternative. Yes, you can do a thermography, which is heat-based camera, and they look at, they take a picture of you, and it heats up based on blood flow, angiogenesis. That's blood flow, and the whole thought process is that cancer is going to suck up blood flow, so you'll see more heat in and around cancer. And so a thermography is the way to go. Not mammography, not mammogram, but thermography. Oliver writes in, how many grams of collagen would you think is in 250 ml bone broth? Trying to get 45 to 60 a day. That's tough. I mean, I would definitely be, if you're trying to get extra, I would be supplementing as well. I just don't know if you can get enough just by doing it like that. Hey, James. James writes in, what are your thoughts on the P65 warning? Oh, yeah, it's nothing. Ignore it. California, you know, they try to be like overly healthy and stuff, and it's actually backfired because you get every supplement that goes to California has to be labeled with that P65 warning because you got lots of trigger happy lawyers that are suing the crap out of supplement companies. So everyone just puts that warning on their products. Basically, if you look at, I have a handout on my site, but if you look at the amount of like natural lead or mercury, or you can just do lead, for instance, there's a tiny amount of lead, even in like organic lettuce or spinach or broccoli. Like there's a natural amount that just happens because of the soil that we have. And it's super, 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 super tiny, right? If you were to take that broccoli or that spinach and you were to put it in a supplement or a capsule, now it's a supplement. So now it would need a P65, Prop 65 label. Difference is if it's not in a supplement and it's just on the shelf at the grocery store, it's fine. You put it in a capsule, put it in a bottle. Now you need the warning. So the problem is people don't understand that. So you walk into any store, it's like you get the P65 warning, cancer, birth defects. You got to understand the context of it. If you were to just go into a farmer's market with just fresh produce, not a problem. You put the produce in a capsule, now there's a problem. So you got to understand the law. It's honestly, it's just designed, in my opinion, for a whole bunch of lawyers to make a whole bunch of money, and it just scares the crap out of people because people don't have the context for it. Let's see here. Have you been watching the series by Pedram Shoba called Interconnected? I have not, but I will have to keep that in mind and put it on my queue. Pamela, you are welcome. J. Pat Family writes in, my digestion slows down and I get very bloated and somewhat constipated before and during ovulation and period. Is there anything I can do to reduce it? I'm taking Cycle Balance and Feminescence. Okay, good. So if your digestion is slowing down and you get very bloated, you can kind of pre-digest your foods, do more Instapot or crock pots or more soup-based things to make it easier to digest. I would do that. And if you're noticing more bloating, and more constipation, you can do more ginger, you can do more magnesium, citrate, more bitters, those kind of things that can be helpful as well. And I would just make sure that you've kind of dialed up the progesterone. If you're starting low and tapering it up, that's great. If it gets better, that's a good sign. If it doesn't get better, it gets worse, then just kind of dial that progesterone down a little bit. And then outside of that, just try to work on the constipation. I think if you get the constipation and the bloating dialed in with the food, I think everything else will take care of itself. Okay, here. So very good. Thanks, Allie D. Appreciate it. Okay, just going through these questions here, guys. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them. I got so many. I have adrenal and gut issues. Can that be causing my dark circles under my eyes to appear? Yeah, definitely can, especially food allergens can, adrenal stress can. Just Google allergic shiners. That's a big cause of these underlying things. And it's just because the lymphatic system is overwhelmed and you're getting this lymphatic pooling under the eyes. Ginger can be helpful. Of course, you can do things like fresh cucumber over it to help, but that's not going to fix the root issue. So get to the food and the adrenals. Enjoy Life writes in, a few months ago, my left ear begins to ring. It comes and goes. Look at food. A lot of times tinnitus, which is the ear ringing, is an autoimmune connection. There's even a thyroid connection with that. So maybe even get your thyroid evaluated. Is there anything I can do for my essential tremor that isn't a high blood pressure medicine? Yeah, a lot of times they use beta blockers to stop that. I would say, what's the underlying cause? Is there an autoimmune issue that's driving it? Is there a blood sugar adrenaline issue that's driving it? Is there an adrenal issue, cortisol surge that's driving it? So I want to know what the underlying cause is. So I want to get you guys to think not like what's the symptom cover up, but what's the root cause. And again, some things can be helpful. So I mean, I would do things like magnesium and GABA and ashwagandha, but I also want to know what the root cause is. So look at those things too. Holly writes in, is it common to get rid of an infection such as H. pylori and then find a parasite such as Giardia that didn't show the first time? Yes, all the time. That's called crypt hyperplasia. A lot of times infections can be burrowed deeper into the gut lining and can come out. It's frustrating, but it can happen. Tea Time writes in, this is embarrassing, but what does it mean when a bowel movement floats? Yes, too much fat in the stool. You can see it looks a little more blonde or clay colored, and it should be sinking, right? Think about oil and water, right? You get you get like olive oil mixed with something with water, you're going to see it all separates, right? If there's maldigested fat in the stool will float at the top. Okay. All right, guys, I got a ton more questions. I won't be able to get to it. I got some couple of patients here waiting for me. Let me just check Facebook real quick. Oh, Steve's on here. Hey, Steve, hope you're doing well. Fighting a cold, taking 60 plus zinc per day. RBC copper levels mid-normal. Do I have to take supplemental copper since I hate taking copper? No, I mean, personally, if you're just doing it acutely and you're doing because you have a cold, that's fine. I wouldn't worry about it. A lot of the rich zinc foods, like in the paleo world, they're actually high in copper too. Like any of your meats or nuts, pumpkin seeds, those kind of things are also high in copper. Don't worry about it. But I'd also be on some medicinal mushrooms. I would be on astragalus, echinacea, andrographis, those kind of things too. There's a couple of good products that are out there. I mean, I have one called Immuno Supreme. There's reishi mushrooms, 500 milligrams per cap. There's one by Orthomolecular called Virusid. This, the silvers that are out there are great too. So start that. All right, y'all. I may be back this afternoon around lunchtime for a quick interview with a special guest. We'll see. So fingers crossed. If I come back, it'll be a surprise. Monitor your YouTube notifications, and we'll talk soon. Have a phenomenal weekend. Take care. Bye, y'all.